46 years ago, the Hollywood industry witnessed the groundbreaking premiere of the movie The Black Hole. However, nothing seems to have faded. Gary Nelson, in partnership with Walt Disney Productions, gave the movie world a perfect glimpse of science fiction while concurrently registering in their hearts an unforgettable experience. The movie mesmerized audiences, disrupted the status quo, and left a trailblazer that cannot be etched out of history. With the likes of Robert Forster, Maximilian Schell, and Joseph Bottoms, it released an aura that dumbfounded critics. But what if I told you what you saw was only half of what transpired in the movie The Black Hole? Not to bore you with long talks, join me as we take a ride uncovering 20 weird facts you didn't know about the black hole. It was modified to suit a PG rating. At a time when movie producers were careful about making films that alter the status quo of the industry, nobody dared switch to a PG rating. Then, guess what? The movie The Black Hole was a product of a PG rating, and honestly, producers did it on purpose. There was something they looked forward to achieving, and just as they had planned, it unraveled one by one. It is safe then to say that the producers of The Black Hole had foresight, and they used it accurately. We deliberately went after the PG rating just to get away from the G rating, director Gary Nelson told The Hollywood Reporter. At first, we didn't know exactly what would make it PG, so we decided that we would say that it was too intense for younger audiences. Plus, dams and hells never appeared in Disney films until The Black Hole. It's a little more of an adult kind of movie, said Robert Forster, who played one of the film's heroes, Captain Dan Holland. It splits the difference, I'm sure. The producers were unsure of which name it would be. At some point, even renowned producers and directors get stuck choosing a suitable name for their movie. Not because they honestly don't have anything to say, but because they are choked with ideas from all corners. Before the name The Black Hole was given to the movie, there was a little hitch in picking a suitable name. From passing through years of development, initially positioned as an Irwin Allen-style disaster movie in space called Space Station, to being handled by writers Bob Barbash and Richard Landau, the movie wasn't going to settle for less after all. But after several schools of thought, a conclusion was reached, and today all we see is the aftermath of years of investment, particularly from 1974. They never could get a handle on it, recalled Nelson. It got kicked around, and they went through a series of writings and rewrites, and they gave up on it. And then when there was such great interest in Star Wars, they brought it back out and looked at it. Well, no one can deny the fact that the movie wasn't worth all the investments. No wonder years later everyone still sings its praises. Nelson had cold feet, handling the project. Working on a project one has no clue about, without exaggeration, would always scare someone, especially if it's the first time. Nelson, as prolific as he was, didn't want to handle the movie The Black Hole, and it was for valid reasons. At the time, the director was no small figure, and even though he had bragging rights like Freaky Friday and The Boy Who Talked to Badgers, he didn't want to give it a try because it was something he wasn't familiar with. Having worked on miniseries, westerns, cop shows, and comedies, drifting to something else was what he wasn't prepared for at the time. However, after much persuasion, he finally bowed to positive pressures, and the rest is history. It's not for me. I don't like it. It's not very good, he said. But Miller was persistent. He said, "Would you like to meet with Peter Ellenshaw, our production designer and head of the matte department? He's done some renderings of some of the spaceships and things like that," said Nelson. I met with Peter and he took me up to his office and showed me these incredible paintings that he had done for the movie, and I fell in love with them. And I said, well shit, if this is what it's going to be like, count me in. Sometimes what eventually changes the status quo of a person may be a path that has never been tread upon, and if one is ready to take the risks, everything eventually falls into place. Nelson pointed out a few corrections in the script before making use of it. Directors are particular about their scripts, and most times they envision greatness with their delivery. However, they never do this without considering if the script could get them what they desire. Did you know that before production started for The Black Hole, director Nelson scrutinized the available script and made a few observations that didn't resonate with his creativity. It was something they didn't see at first. However, after viewing it from his perspective, they agreed and allowed him to do his thing. It's been many years since, and only a few knew the sacrifices that Nelson put into the project. It wasn't to be quantified by sweat and blood. It was a similar kind of thing about a spacecraft that had been captured out in space and was hanging around a black hole. But on board were all the typical Disney characters, the families. It was like a city up there, and they were all in danger of being destroyed by the black hole, and they had to be rescued. And I thought, what is all this bullshit? So we threw all that out. No producer is ready to risk everything they have worked for, and to be honest, Nelson never wanted to fall into that category. The redefinition of the script was replaced with a few things, and it didn't just make a difference, it altered the final outcome for good. The cast connected with each other deeply. One of every producer's nightmares is getting cast members who, at some point, may have fallen out. Even though they seem to be flawless in their roles, it truly doesn't make any difference, as it eventually spoils every effort that the producers have underlined. Filming The Black Hole came with lots of relatability, and one of them was that the cast saw themselves as brothers rather than enemies. Despite not being actively involved in each other's auditions, they threw away the baggage of troubles and embraced each other with peace of mind. And honestly, it helped their delivery in no small way. It was reported that passers-by often mistook them for family members, as they had so many things in common. The only person that I could really feel would be right for the part of Reinhardt was Maximilian Schell, and Ron Miller agreed, said Nelson. He was so imposing, good-looking, dark, magnetic. Maximilian Schell, man, that was a great casting decision, said Bottoms. I really connected with Schell. Looking at him, I thought to myself, I look like him. He looks like me. There's something about this guy. Dealing with stars who were no small actors isn't something as easy as it sounds. However, the job was made easier for the director because nature favored him. Today in history, if we talk about The Black Hole, the cast can never be underemphasized, as they played definitive roles in making the movie what it is today. Someone didn't like Schell handling the role he handled. Getting cast for a typical movie shoot isn't easy to come by. Sometimes it takes months to find the perfect cast that could deliver a perfect and timeless piece as intended by the producers. Before cameras rolled for the movie The Black Hole, certain cast members were invited for auditions, and one of them was Maximilian Schell. However, some crew members were not convinced that he was going to deliver a good job for reasons best known to them. Nelson's pal Arthur Hiller warned him that Schell could be a monster on set, but he was still determined to land the tempestuous actor. At the time, Schell was directing Tales from the Vienna Woods and needed to trek out to Vienna for a face-to-face meeting with Nelson. Just as Arthur had suggested, Schell pulled up and suggested that the production cast Jason Robards as Reinhardt instead. Stanley Kubrick had just told him of this mini-series he'd seen with Robards, explained Nelson. Schell said, "By the way, have you seen it? It's called Washington, Behind Closed Doors." I thought he was jerking me off. I said, "Yes, I not only saw it, I directed it." And his face was the most honest shock I've seen on a person. You couldn't direct him any better. And he grabbed me, threw his arms around me, and gave me a great big fucking kiss on the mouth and said, "I will do your movie." And that was it. Nelson explained that Schell had a couple of caveats. He wanted to bring his film with him that he just finished, and his editor, to California. During his downtime, he wanted to have a cutting room on the lot where he could continue to edit his movie, which we agreed to, of course. Robert Forster accepted his role, without thinking twice. Every actor's dream is to be in the world's latest project. However, this doesn't come on a platter of gold. Producers must trust you that much to get you hooked into their project, and for Robert Forster, it wasn't just a problem. Even though he had only a few caps to his name, he knew how to kill every role with a little touch of charisma. Just before production started for The Black Hole, Forster's phone rang for a role as one of the cast in the movie. However, contrary to what many had thought, he was excited to be featured in the movie. Immediately, he was handed the script. He was already envisaging himself on set without distractions. And guess what? He made his role so amazing to watch, and today in history, he stands as one of the most talked about cast members of The Black Hole. My agent Ad agent, the Time called and said, "I've got a picture for you, and it's the black hole, and it was extraordinary. 20,000 leagues under the sea in space. Holy moly," recalled Forster. "It's some real big players in it. Ernest Borgnine was a big player, Maximilian Schell was big, Tony Perkins was big, and Yvette Mimieux was certainly very well known, and here I am. I was probably 11 or 12 when I read the Jules Verne story, and when I realized that I was going to do the space version of that, wow. You know, there are moments when you're an actor and you get to play something extraordinary, and that was a big one." Forster went on to become one of the most sought-after actors in Hollywood, and this can be traced to The Black Hole. Bottoms wasn't given a head start.
My character and a robot named Vincent. Not really, but...
At first, nothing hurts as much as being sidelined as an actor when you know you can deliver a role perfectly. Did you know Bottoms, who is the middle child of the three Bottom brothers making waves in the 70s, wasn't actually given a head start? Even though they were in demand by all and sundry at the time, producers didn't think he was going to do a perfect job. He was the least of the actors producers were considering. However, luck shone on him, and he was able to convince them he was worth all the hype at the time. They had a list of people they were looking at, probably all the usual suspects that Disney had in their films over the years in my age group, remembered Bottoms. "I do recall sitting with Gary and Ron at the Mouse Factory, at the executive offices upstairs, a happy, cheery place, and I thought, I can do this. You guys have a commissary, right? How cool is that? Then I thought, oh, the fun of working on something I could share. Should I ever have children, I would have made a Disney movie. And it's science fiction. That's awesome." Bottoms played his role so well that producers had no choice but to nickname him the king of the set, and indeed he was. The role of Kate McRae wasn't easy to come by. Casting an actor in a movie isn't as easy as many think it is. It even gets worse when the actors have some bragging rights in their past movies. The role of Kate McRae was really a problem during the filming of The Black Hole. The producers and directors disagreed on a particular choice for reasons best known to them, and for many days they went back and forth with this contention. Kate McRae, who shares a telepathic connection with the robot Vincent, wasn't easy to come by, as Nelson had thought of casting a pre-alien Sigourney Weaver. However, when he brought the option to the producers, they kicked against it with no small might. Speaking in an interview, he revealed how they countered him with a nasty statement, and it was the height of it all. "Oh my God, with a name like Sigourney Weaver, we don't want her." So they turned to summer 42 star Jennifer O'Neill. Her signature long, beautiful hair became a problem. "We shot one day, I think it was a test or something. She was in zero gravity," remembered Nelson. "She had this long hair down to the center of her back. She was always very proud of it. It actually made her career with hair products and everything, and I looked and I said, 'This is not working. You have to cut your hair.' And she said, 'Oh, I can't do that.' And I said, 'You're gonna have to, because that's what I want, and it's right for the movie too.' And so she finally agreed, and so she brought her personal hairstylist, Vidal Sassoon, to the studio. It was one of the difficult moments for the Black Hole director. Nevertheless, he managed to pull through. Jennifer O'Neill had an accident. Filming The Black Hole came with lots of unexpected circumstances, and one of them was the tragic accident that befell the phenomenal actress Jennifer O'Neill. Though it wasn't expected, it frightened the hell out of producers and directors. It all began when they forcefully cut the actress's hair because it was disrupting their shoot. It was revealed that she barged into her car in anger, and on her way, she lost control. Nelson reported that after the disastrous haircut session, she got in her car to drive home, and she got into an accident on Sunset Boulevard and ended up in the hospital. So we had to recast, and we cast Yvette Mimieux the next day. All that trauma and everything getting her hair cut was for naught. It was kind of a shame. Bottoms speculated, "I always wondered with Jennifer why they just didn't say, 'Are you opposed to a wig?' Why did they ever put her through that?" It was something that took her by surprise, but thanks to nature, who gave her a second chance to keep the acting fire burning. Not many actresses could continue such a journey, but Jennifer was ready to risk it all despite all that happened. An actress was forced to go against her own wishes.
There is not it's not a romantic story, it's a big adventure story, but there are undercurrents.
Everyone has got a wish of theirs, but times can change, and doing what one isn't happy about could be the only option. This was the fate of Yvette Mimieux, a young actress whose hair was the center of attraction. At the time, she had just finished making her mark as one of the actresses in George Pal's The Time Machine 2 decades earlier, but met an unforgettable experience that made her question what she stood for. She was forced to trim her hair just as Jennifer O'Neill had done. It was like a thorn in the flesh. Nevertheless, she had no choice but to obey if she was going to continue as a cast member. Yvette Mimieux started out as a long-haired, beautiful blonde woman, said Forster. In space, her long hair would be flying all over the place and would not be appropriate, so she got a haircut, and then she became a beautiful, short-haired woman in outer space. This was one of the things she signed up for before taking a role, and even though she didn't see it coming at the time, it tested her resilience in no small way. The production company made some crazy moves. Who doesn't want to make a profit after a typical movie shoot, one might want to ask? On the flip side, before filming began, the production team had this in mind, and for that reason, they made a smart move that promoted publicity. Principal photography on the black hole started on October 11, 1978, and ran until April 20th of the following year. As production got underway, there was certainly a lot of buzz around the film happening on the Disney lot in Burbank. This was well orchestrated by the production team, and every one of their expectations came to pass without having to go through several difficult seasons. It was my idea to put a "Do Not Enter" sign on the soundstage, said Nelson. Nobody was allowed without a pass. We had a guard there 24 hours a day. We didn't want anybody to know what we were doing, trying to keep it a mystery and not leak out that maybe we didn't really have a good movie, you know? The entire show was pretty tight, remembered Bottoms. The ADS had storyboard books that they'd refer to and go shot by shot. They had a plan. They needed to have that plan. It was a pretty smart move. The team had seen great light ahead and therefore laid their hands on every strategy to get the gear rolling. It was exactly 26 weeks, 7 in the morning till 7 at night, no variation, said Forster. Disney knows how to keep a schedule, and they made their picture, and it came in on time. Sometimes it would only be 2 or 3 shots in a day, something big. When we were approaching the event horizon of the black hole and the ship was being torn apart, there was sometimes only 1 shot. We would prepare it in the morning and then rehearse it, and then come back in the afternoon and shoot it, and maybe shoot it only 2 or 3 times. In general, we shot a small, finite number of shots in a day. Shooting the movie required a huge budget. In an industry where ideas hinge on the tenacity of finance, only a few could take such a risk, knowing what was involved. This notwithstanding, Nelson was ready to risk it all despite all it would take. Did you know that the black hole took a strenuous budget to hold? Well, maybe you are hearing it for the first time. Everything that transpired was worth some good cash. Forster once said that the big budget scope of the film didn't faze him, having held his own opposite Elizabeth Taylor, Marlon Brando, and John Huston in his first picture, Reflections in a Golden Eye. It was all in a day's work. You've got to satisfy everybody on that set, he explained in workmanlike fashion. Everybody is your boss, everybody needs something from you, and when you get to hear action, you get a chance to deliver your best effort at making that shot work, because you're trying to build a roller coaster track, something that will carry the audience down, up, and around the curves. You owe something to everybody, and if at the end of that ride you aren't believable, the audience won't be with you at the end of the shot. Thanks to the production team, who didn't fret at the instance of the budget, they made it, and it was worth it. Everyone loved Nelson. The Hollywood industry isn't an easy game that someone can play at intervals. However, Nelson was the master of it. How? No one knows. But he knew how to get the attention of everyone toward him, including the cast. Filming the black hole wasn't stressful, as many might have thought. This was all because Nelson made a conducive atmosphere for everyone to give their best. The cast loved him because he was easy to relate to, and he didn't yell at the slightest provocation. Robert was great, added Bottoms. We had good camaraderie. We got along cool. I learned a lot from Robert about finessing, graciousness. He was always being a card about certain things, kind of a funny guy, a New York kind of guy, just a joker, Bottoms said of working with Nelson. As a director, I knew exactly what he was after. He was very easygoing. He was like the gunslinger that never pulled his gun. He never had to. He had people that could do it. He was great at delegating and deferring to what was going to be possible. If Gary said that's what he would like me to do, I was so prepared to do what he wanted done, I would just go for it. This wasn't some voodoo stuff. Nelson was worth all the hype. No wonder he delivered his job perfectly without any constraints. A particular cast was everyone's favorite. In an industry where hate, malice, and dark secrets run the status quo, it would have been insane to ever think that the cast members were on good terms. However, guess what? Some of the cast members found a particular cast member worthy of commendation, and truly he was deserving of it. Borgnine had a way of appealing to everyone on set, and even though he was trapped with the day's activities, he never took it as an offense. Speaking in an interview, Foster revealed he was just one good guy no one could shrug off. His presence was endearing, and so was his heart. He was one of those really good guys, saying, if there was something to be done on the set, he was not the guy who would wait for somebody else to do it. If there was something that needed doing, he would grab it and do it. He'd pick up a broom to push the refuse out of the way. He set an example for me. Borgnine was everybody's uncle or brother, explained Bottoms. He was just the most gregarious person and took a great interest in everybody. He was a super social guy. He was like Hollywood royalty in a way. With the longevity of his career, he could be counted on. Anthony Perkins was the producer's favorite.
Thank you. Have you met the Goonies before?
Well, it's an adventure picture that's also going to have some scientific truths in it and some experimentation in it.
Getting along with a cast doesn't come easy on a platter of gold. Most times, producers and directors usually work themselves out to be at ease with the cast, but not for Gary Nelson. During filming, Nelson didn't have to struggle with cast members putting things together, and at some point, fell in love with the persona of Anthony Perkins. Perkins was on a different level at the time and delivered his role so well that he was accorded respect by the production team. As for Anthony Perkins, the former Psycho star was also a bright spot among the principal cast. I just think Tony Perkins is one of the most interesting character and leading man-type actors around, said Nelson, who had worked with him as an assistant director on the western The Lonely Man in the late 50s. He was a delight to work with. We would have hours and hours of setups and everything and nothing to do but stand around and tell stories. And Tony had the most wonderful stories of working with Hitchcock. And he could imitate Hitchcock, his voice and his mannerisms, and he would just have us in the aisles laughing. Perkins had good work ethics. This separated him from other cast members and eventually landed himself a soft spot in the production team. The film star, who was already known at the time, didn't use it as leverage for drastic behavior. Instead, he delivered every role accorded him with ease and passion, thereby earning himself some freedom. Perkins' death was as violent as anyone could think of.
No, I can't make it. My hover stabilization's gone, my main circuit's blown, and both backups are...
Have you ever wondered why certain scenes look so real, even though there seem to be some stunts added to them? Well, this is because some scenes remain iconic in a movie, and most times, producers give their all to portray what they intended. Did you know that the death of Anthony Perkins in the movie was as violent as it appeared on screen? Perkins, who played the character Durant in The Black Hole, didn't even know how it looked until he had the chance to take a glimpse. On the bridge of the Cygnus, the malevolent robot Maximilian activates his blades and goes straight for the heart of Durant, who tries to block the attack with his notebook, but the blades saw right through. Shown just off-screen, the audience can only imagine the implied evisceration by Perkins' pained facial reaction. It wasn't like they had Tarantino blood splattering flying out or organs or something, recalled Bottoms. But it was going to be Tony's doing his thing, and I remember I wanted to watch the death scene. I could see what was going on, but they had all these flags on stands blocking it so the crew couldn't see what was happening. Nobody was allowed to see it. Of Durant using the book to instinctively protect himself, Nelson said, "That was an improvisational thing on the set. I loved it. I just had this visual of Tony holding this book with all the great knowledge that he needs in front of him to protect himself, and Maximilian just grinds him up. It was that horrific." Some of the cast had even thought the film star would face some mental challenges afterwards. Nevertheless, he went through it without so much stress, while subsequently fixing his heart on better days. The expectations of using a special effect came out as intended nothing. Nothing hits so hard as giving your all to a project as a producer and ending up not getting what was bargained for. Nelson knew there was a possibility of this happening, and so he fixed every loophole that could rip off his hard work. The scene where, after Durant was murdered, McCrae was saved from being lobotomized into a worker drone. The heroes headed back to the Palomino to make their escape. Then a sudden storm of orange meteors envelops the Cygnus, setting the stage for the film's bravura special effects moments. A massive ball of fire crashing through a main corridor of the ship, barreling towards our heroes. It took a whole lot to put this scene together, and just so you know, some special effects came into play. The producers would later confess that all their plans worked perfectly, and they couldn't be less grateful. All hell is breaking loose, and this meteor comes crashing through and rolls down toward the camera as they run across the suspension bridge from one side of the ship to the other, described Nelson. A, it was my idea, and B, it came off really well. A lot of that we shot live, and much of it was of course put in later by magic, but the shot was exactly the way I had talked about it, and the way Peter and the special effects specialists put it all together. I was proud of that. The movie featured more than 150 matte paintings. Putting up such a timeless movie as The Black Hole needed a whole lot to get through, and the producers weren't going to trade its outcome for anything. Did you know that the movie, which holds a reputable stance in history, wouldn't have been worth seeing if the painting didn't meet the number in Nelson's mind? It took resilience and hard work to get things done. Nevertheless, they were ready to make things work without delay. 150 matte paintings were employed in the shooting of the movie, and you know it was no child's play. This department was managed by Peter Ellenshaw's son, Harrison, and the pieces were used for everything from set extensions to standing in for the set themselves. When Nelson saw the setup on set, he was so amazed and had something nice to say to Ellenshaw. He's a genius, and if I don't give him credit, he'll take credit himself. And it's well deserved. All the model work, the visual effects, the design of the camera, this was all done in-house. We didn't have anybody from the outside come in, like ILM or any of these people, and help. It was all Disney people, and they were magnificent. It was the best the Magic Kingdom had to offer, and Gary had those people available to him in every regard, said Bottoms. Ron Miller made that promise to him, I think. This is a big deal for us. You've got it, Gary. We want you to do this, and we want you to tell the story. Thanks to the picture department for giving their all, there probably would have been no iconic moments without them. A lot was scrapped. During the creation of the movie's signature robot characters, the movie The Black Hole was deserving of every credit, and some great names were deserving of accolades too. In light of this, Ellenshaw enlisted celebrated 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Star Trek, the motion picture conceptual artist Robert McCall to develop the look of the movie's signature robot. However, when Nelson saw it, he wasn't pleased with it, so he eventually scrapped everything. Speaking in an interview, he gave his reason for having no choice but to go that way, and it was worth every explanation. We threw all that out. I didn't like it at all. The design and everything just was kind of freewheeling. We had so many concepts of what they should be and what they should look like, but I was pretty much in charge of all that, so if you didn't like it, I'll take the blame. Nelson eventually got the last laugh, and then he made some honest changes. Thanks to his instincts, which gave him that idea. Otherwise, it would have stalled the outcome of the movie. Gary Nelson was a man who listened to his instincts, and this blessed him in no small way. The movie The Black Hole had to be one that continually stands tall in history as its best. Despite being 40 years old, it still seems like it was made for this time and season. The producers and directors looked beyond the nitty-gritty of yesteryears and delivered a timeless piece that would even be relevant at all times. The crew's foresight was out of this world. They were 10 steps ahead of their contemporaries, and it worked for them. For many in the industry, The Black Hole remains their favorite, and without exaggeration, it's got some magnetic pull that can draw one closer. Which of these facts put you in a thoughtful mode? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments, and don't be quick to go. Lots of amazing videos are at your disposal with just one click. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel.